Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Amit Harari, and coming up in today's newscasts, Likud leader Benjamin Netanyahu receiving the mandate to form a government from Israeli President Isaac Herzog. Meantime, the United Nations on Friday voting in favor of an anti-Israel resolution. And history is made as thousands of Israeli soccer fans are expected to attend the World Cup in Qatar. Israeli President Isaac Herzog consultations have ended, and as expected, Herzog now giving the first mandate to form a coalition to Likud chief and former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. ILTV's Aaron Porras with more.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog meeting with representatives of every party following the fifth elections in Israel, and 64 Knesset members endorsing Likud leader Benjamin Netanyahu for the next prime minister, which means that Herzog will be giving Netanyahu the mandate to negotiate a new government.
לפי כל השיקולים הנובעים מהחוק ומן המסורת שהונהגה על ידי קודמיי. מבחינת התמיכה הגדולה ביותר במועמד מסוים מקרב חברי הכנסת, ומבחינת המפלגה הגדולה ביותר בכנסת, וכמובן מבחינת השיקול עליו מצביעים כשיקול המרכזי. מיהו חבר הכנסת לא יש את הסיכוי הגבוה ביותר להרכיב את הממשלה הבאה, התוצאה היא ברורה. ויש להטיל את מלאכת הרכבת הממשלה על חבר הכנסת בנימין נתניהו.
Outgoing Prime Minister Yair Lapid, meantime, receiving just 28 endorsements from his own Yesh Atid party and the left-wing Labour. And the remaining 28 Knesset members from the National Unity, the Israel Beitenu, and the Arab parties Ram and Khatash-Tal abstaining from any recommendations. Still, while Netanyahu has the majority, his hopes of immediately forming a coalition now delayed. This as negotiations opposite his religious Zionism and Haredi party backers reportedly set to extend for at least another week. Among the issues causing delay, tense pushback against giving key ministerial portfolios to members of the religious Zionism party. Party leader Bezalel Smotrich, for example, still trying to get the defense or the finance portfolio, with Netanyahu showing reluctance to give him either. Though of the two, it's more likely that Smotrich would be given control of the Treasury, while defense would be retained by the Likud, as would the Foreign Affairs Ministry, the Justice Ministry, and the position of Knesset Speaker. Itamar Ben-Gvir, on the other hand, still expected to gain the Public Security Ministry as demanded. And then as for the Haredi parties, Shas, for one, is expected to get the Interior Ministry and the Religious Affairs Ministry, the Orthodox elements in government working hard to reverse the previous coalition's supposed leniency in matters of faith and national observance law, including barring Reform converts from eligibility to immigrate or to make aliyah to Israel. In any case, final appointments likely to be announced in the coming week.
And now joining us with more on all the latest news, Executive Director of Honest Reporting and former JPOS political analyst, Gil Hoffman. Thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure being with you.
So Benjamin Netanyahu got the mandate to form the government for President Herzog. We're hearing MKs demanding certain ministries already. Is there anything we still don't know?
We don't know anything for sure yet. There are meetings taking place right now in order to enable Netanyahu to form a government as soon as possible. Unlike previous negotiations that took place when Netanyahu anyway was prime minister, and therefore there was no hurry, Netanyahu wants to get rid of Yair Lapid from the prime minister's office as soon as possible. And because he wants to hurry, his coalition partners can use that to their advantage to extort the top portfolios possible out of it.
Yes, and what we're hearing this morning is that Smotrich is still demanding defense, while Chairman Aryeh Deri wants the finance ministry. Can Bibi get away with not giving Smotrich either of his first choices? I mean, would Smotrich accept anything less?
The answer is that Netanyahu, if he holds out longer, he can get away with not giving Smotrich what he wants. Smotrich has 7 seats, not 14. The Otzma Yehudit party of Itamar Ben-Gvir is splitting apart, and Noam has one of those seats. And someone with 7 seats, they it's right to say that they don't deserve to be finance minister or defense minister. There's a meeting taking place right now as we speak at Aryeh Deri's home here in Jerusalem with Smotrich apparently Netanyahu sent Deri to try to persuade Smotrich to not have such an appetite.
Can't Netanyahu say it himself?
Netanyahu has proven over time that if you ask him the right way at the right time, he'll give it to you. And Netanyahu does not care so much about promoting the members of his own party. He never has. It would help him out if he had people he could control being finance minister and defense minister. Whether that's better for him to have someone from his party or someone from another party, we don't know. But Smotrich is a very, very independent person who can cause a lot of problems. And I can understand why Netanyahu would rather have him in a role where he controls things that Netanyahu does not care as much about, like education or even the Ministry of Interior.
Yes, now looking at the other side, Gantz and Lieberman abstained from giving anyone a recommendation. Is there any chance for them to join Netanyahu? Why or why not, actually?
They have ruled out to their constituents who voted for them, sitting in Netanyahu-led government. Both of them have had personal fights with Netanyahu that they have not recovered from. So no, I don't see either of them joining. What could be possible is that there could be some kind of break-off within Gantz's party of people whose ideology is less set, with people whose hatred of Netanyahu is less personal. Breaking off 4 out of 12 has happened before. It can happen again.
Yes, some Knesset members are worried about the influence of people like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, of course. So shouldn't they consider joining the coalition just to weaken Netanyahu's reliance on them as coalition partners?
I can understand that argument, that they would want the country to be in better hands and therefore they should try to join. But then the politicians have also said, well, if we show the world what an extreme government would look like, then the people of Israel realize they made a mistake in their voting, and next time they vote for them. Look, that's worked in the past. For instance, Netanyahu, you'd think that from his own ideology, he wouldn't have wanted to let Yair Lapid become prime minister, that he would have not let that loophole happen and ensure that Naftali Bennett would have remained prime minister until after a government would be formed. He could have done that, but he was advised that if Lapid would become prime minister, then that's what would make his voters more motivated to come vote. And that worked. And there is something to be said about the role of an opposition in a democracy.
Thank you so much, Gil, for all the information. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
IDF security forces continuing to mount pressure on Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists and other similar groups in Judea and Samaria over the weekend, and publishing footage from a Saturday morning raid, the IDF showing arrest of 2 terror suspects, both convicted terrorists and former prisoners in Israel, including one senior Islamic Jihad leader, Mohammed Samir Abu Zina. Abu Zina was indicted for his involvement in terrorist activities, including arming and funding Islamic Jihad terror cells across Judea and Samaria. And after his release from prison just 3 months ago, he reportedly resumed these activities. The arresting forces, meantime, operated near Jenin, coming under attack by Palestinian rioters who threw stones and explosive devices, though no IDF injuries were reported. The United Nations General Assembly has passed its latest anti-Israel resolution. This time, a large UN majority called for International Court of Justice to weigh on Israel's allegedly Israel occupation of Palestinian lands. Israeli Ambassador Gilad Erdan called the move a potential death blow to peace prospects. ILTV Steve Leibovich reports.
Israel is fuming over the United Nations General Assembly vote calling on the International Court of Justice to weigh in on the alleged illegal occupation of Palestinian territories as de facto annexation. Prime Minister Yair Lapid rejected the decision as one-sided and undermining the peace process. Israeli UN Ambassador Gilad Erdan said this was but the latest example of UN double standard against Israel.
Today, the international community stands at a crossroads. With the click of a button, each member state can choose to be an accomplice in destroying any hope for reconciliation. The resolutions before us are part of a long line of one-sided anti-Israel resolutions passed each year. Their purpose is not to promote peace or encourage a solution. The only purpose behind them is to demonize Israel and exempt the Palestinians of any responsibility for their current situation.
At issue is whether, after 56 years, Israel hold on territories in Judea and Samaria captured in the Six-Day War can be considered de facto annexation and illegal under international law. Ambassador Erdogan fumed against the move as a death blow to future negotiations.
Israel signed 4 peace agreements in the last 2 years, and the Palestinians claim to teach us Israelis about peace? For Israel, peace is not only an empty slogan. In Israel, we educate our children in tolerance and coexistence. We pray for peace 3 times a day. The Palestinians sadly do the opposite. Their culture of incitement, hate, and violence is deliberately taught in schools and even kindergartens, poisoning the minds of generations.
The ambassador went on to lambast Palestinian rejectionism.
The Palestinians have rejected every single peace initiative, and now they embroil an external body with the excuse that the conflict has not been resolved, but the only reason why it hasn't been resolved is because of their rejectionism.
The General Assembly voted 98-17 in favor of the resolution, with 52 nations abstaining. A surprise supporter of the resolution was Ukraine, which earned a condemnation from the Israeli ambassador in Kyiv. The United States, Canada, Australia, and Germany were among the opponents of the anti-Israel resolution. Israeli leaders across the political spectrum rejected the latest move as proof that the UN cannot be a fair arbitrator.
With me to discuss the latest news on this decision is attorney Aoife Segal, fellow with the Israel Security and Defense Forum and International Director of UK Lawyers for Israel. Hi, Aoife, thank you for joining.
Hi, thank you for having me.
98 countries voted in favor of the resolution, with 17 voting against and 52 abstaining. How concerned should we be?
Well, I think we should be very concerned. Unfortunately, on the international arena, we keep on taking these hits with the international establishments. And last time we've seen something similar like that was in the opinion that was asked of the ICJ in regards to the security fence back in 2004. And we see that echo the consequences still affect us today. That decision is being quoted again and again and again. And it is not understood, unfortunately, as something that is only an opinion. It does not create international law, but actually the world understands it as something that has gravity a lot more than it should. And so it's a judiciary mechanism. It is taken very seriously. And so unfortunately, the world doesn't understand how politically motivated these institutions are. And there are ramifications, as I said, that we can see decades ahead.
How do you actually explain the legitimacy that so many countries are giving the resolution by voting for it? I mean, some of them are Russia and Ukraine, but also Arab countries Israel has ties with, like Jordan, Egypt, and even the UAE.
Well, unfortunately, I think that our good relationships that have started building up with the UAE and other countries in the region does not yet manifest on the international arena. We see a very big difference in terms of Israel relations bilateral with various countries, European countries, Arab countries, and how it actually manifests on the international arena. So when it comes to the United Nations and various establishments of the international arena, we still see them vote against us. There's still an issue of a voting bloc that hasn't been broken yet. I would say to this new government now, it should be a priority on devising a strategy on how to break that bloc and how to really make those countries vote in accordance to their bilateral relationship with Israel, and not just in terms of how their bloc votes on these issues.
What countries were the problematic ones this time? Problematic ones?
Well, we see, I mean, you said it yourself. I mean, we see a country like Ukraine, right? I mean, they keep on pressuring us to be on their side, and we are on their side on many aspects. And yet they turn around and they vote against us on something like this, which is clearly politically motivated. And we see a country like the UAE. I mean, the bilateral relationship is more than a dream come true. I mean, if we looked at what could be 2 years ago, right, when we just signed the Abraham Accords, I think the relationship has exceeded even our wildest dreams and expectations, right, on a bilateral level. But then again, when it comes to voting in the United Nations, it's shocking to people like us, and I think it harms the relationship. And I think that we should really emphasize on these countries that would like our support, both on the international arena and in bilateral relationship. We should demand a price. They should vote with us and not against us.
It is shocking indeed. And Aoife, if the ICJ adopts and supports the motion, what consequences are there for Israel?
Well, it's hard to say exactly, but it's another nail, let's say, and unfortunately, the coffin of Israel's legitimacy. I mean, we've been fighting the legitimacy of our existence, of our basic policies that we believe are required even for our own survival. And so, to have a judicial institution like the ICJ come out with an opinion that is very unfavorable to us would have ramifications. I can foresee that whatever that decision will be, probably against Israel, probably biased, probably unprofessional in terms of really looking into the issues. It can be referenced in any other national parliament or other international institutions. I mean, I can see the ICC maybe later down the line referencing them to say, here the ICJ have determined occupation or some kind of an illegal activity. I see the potential of harm that can be caused of this as exponential.
It's definitely concerning. Aoife, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Have a great week.
Thank you. As the war between Russia and Ukraine continues, Kiev said it will push to make its defense industry more like that in Israel, while describing Ukraine's need to develop its own capabilities in weapons manufacture. Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov said that his country needs to emulate Israel.
I think that the best answer in Israel, in all threats alongside their borders, it was developing their national industry for their armed forces. It made them independent. And Ukraine continued to fighting with the Russians for our independence, our sovereignty, also continuing to develop our independence at home.
Could the key to securing world food supply for the future be hidden in the DNA of crops from the distant past? This is something Israeli scientists are working on diligently. Here's the truly incredible story. Scientists in Israel are creating a gene bank from the seeds of local wild crops, some that have survived for thousands of years since the birth of agriculture and that may help farmers deal with a harsher climate in the coming decades. In a eucalyptus grove nestled between an industrial zone and a railroad under construction, botanist Alon Singer collected seeds from a number of plants recently spotted, including a variety of water mint that will be frozen and stored at the Israel Plant Gene Bank at the Volcani Institute, the National Agriculture R&D Center. Singer is combing the country along with other scouts in search of a variety of wheat, barley, and countless other wild crops so their genetic makeup can be saved and studied before they're lost to expanding deserts and urbanization as the climate warms.
אתה יכול לקחת את הגנים ממיני הבר ולהכניס אותם למיני התרבות. מיני הבר הם נמצאים כל הזמן בטבע. הם חשופים לכל המחלות ולכל השינויים, ולכן יש להם את כל העמידויות שאנחנו מחפשים.
Tens of thousands of types of seeds are stored in the gene bank. It may be smaller than some collections elsewhere in the world, but the gene pool here is very unique.
There are many gene banks around the world. Almost every country has one. But Israel is located in a very unique place. First, we are located within 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, making this very small land of Israel a hot spot of biodiversity from these all three phytogeographical areas. The second thing is being part of the Fertile Crescent. This is where agriculture started.
The research has already been paying off. For example, the Institute has engineered a variety of wheat with an ultra-short life cycle. It may not be able to compete today, but it could be a saving grace in hotter climate with reduced growing seasons. The World Bank warns that global agriculture is extremely vulnerable to climate change. Negative effects are already being felt with hotter temperatures, more frequent extreme weather events, and invasive crops and pests, all which are now being discussed at the COP27 summit in Egypt. As it is in many other countries, Israel is grappling with a growing rift between socioeconomic classes and a shrinking middle class. But the joint organization among those looking to address the issue and cement paths for greater social mobility. ILTV's Aaron Porras reports.
In collaboration with the Israeli government, the Israeli Joint Ashelim organization is hosting the incredible Socioeconomic Leadership Conference over the weekend. It's designed for people from all over the world to join together, learn from one another, and develop methods of promoting equal opportunity and narrowing the socioeconomic gaps in our societies. And the leadership discussed manifesting in nearly all areas of life: education and training, the economy, healthcare, digital life, and a sense of community, with an emphasis on the populations that make up the various social fabrics in Israel. Further, among the keynote speakers at this year's conference, senior consultant for philanthropy and strategy in the social sector and now member of the advisory board of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Nisha Fatal. Meantime, long grappling with the question of stagnating socioeconomic mobility, the joint organization partnering with the Israeli Education Ministry and data polling company ERI to answer the following questions. What are the biggest factors that affect social mobility? When's the most important time for intervention and investment, and in what areas? And what are the most effective methods of such interventions? The result, a comprehensive map of children's developmental milestones from birth until adulthood made available to the public. In fact, using this information and metadata analysis on this and other research, plans on how and when to intervene can be formulated with teachers, administrators, and officials across sectors. To learn more, visit thejoint.org.il.
For the first time, Israelis will fly directly to Qatar later this month for the FIFA World Cup. These are the first ever direct flights from Ben Gurion Airport to Doha, although there will be brief diplomatic stopovers in Cyprus because Israel and Qatar lack consular services for Israel that will be provided by a private travel company in Doha. Qatari officials said that the policy is in line with FIFA policies to allow all to attend matches. FIFA said it brokered the deal that would allow holders of match tickets during the one-month event. Israeli and West Bank Palestinian soccer fans will travel together on the flights. The World Cup, the first to be held in the Middle East, runs from November 20 to December 18.
Passengers can travel with the Israeli passport for the World Cup period, since now till the end of December. It's a new thing, but they're not gonna stamp the passport, just scan it. So Israelis will not have a Qatar stamp on their passport.
The agreement on direct flights does not change Qatar's stance on normalizing relations with Israel, which is linked to Palestinian statehood, a Qatari official said. Prime Minister Yair Lapid is hopeful that the World Cup can be a stop towards normalization.
בשורה משמחת לכל אזרחי ישראל ולאוהדי הכדורגל בפרט. אחרי עבודה מאומצת של חודשים ארוכים, הצלחנו לסגור טיסות ישירות למונדיאל בקטר, ויפתח משרד ישראלי בקטר לטיפול בענייני הנוסעים לשם.
Thousands of Israeli tourists long shunned in Qatar are planning to make the trip both to see the championship and get a rare opportunity to see an emirate otherwise off limits. The Abraham Accords, struck in 2020 with Bahrain, Morocco, and the UAE, marked a decisive turn in the region. The prospect of Israeli normalization with Qatar, which helps bankroll the Gaza Strip's Hamas rulers, remains for future developments. But the influx of thousands of Israeli fans into the conservative Muslim country could advance Israel's ambitions to fully normalize relations in the region. We're looking forward. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. The forecast calling for clear skies around the majority of the country this evening, with tonight's lows averaging around 15 degrees Celsius or 75 Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow we can expect cooler top temperatures ranging from low to mid-20s, along with partly cloudy skies across the region. Now that's all for today's news. For more updates on Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channels on YouTube, Facebook, and Telegram, and subscribe to our ILTV newsletter. I'm Amit Harari. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.